Time now for QB1, and I'm joined by Chris Phillips. And Chris, we're talking about Jacoby Brissett and Deshaun Watson together today because it's kind of a package deal. Let's start by where things stand right now with Deshaun having been in limbo. Do you see Jacoby Brissett being the starter for, say, the rest of the year?
As of right now, I think the only way Jacoby's probably, well, I guess the only couple of ways that Jacoby's probably the starter for the rest of the season is if something happens with Deshaun's legal cases and the NFL decides they want to keep him out a little bit longer for the rest of the season. The other option would be that Jacoby somehow makes the winning plays. I mean, if you look at Cleveland's record, they have lost their last 4 games. But really, there's only one game that they got blown out in, and that was the New England game. The rest of the games, they're within a score. So you're talking about, the football bouncing the opposite way for them here or there. And Cleveland could very well be undefeated. They could have a winning record. It could be a totally different situation in Cleveland where we're talking about, hey, is there just a quarterback controversy, or could there even be a potential quarterback controversy, when Deshaun gets back, when Deshaun's suspension is over, just because Jacoby's led this team to a winning record. So, it's not that Jacoby hasn't played great. He's played about as to be expected for his abilities. And really for the team, he's done well. It's just they haven't been able to make the winning plays. And that, unfortunately, is probably what's ultimately going to cost Jacoby his shot at being the starter once Deshaun gets cleared from his suspension and is able to get back and play on the field.
And what about this most recent lawsuit for Deshaun Watson? Will that impact anything?
As of right now, what the league is saying is that the plan is still to go ahead with Deshaun's current suspension, that nothing's going to change. Now, with that being said, we have seen the NFL kind of bend to the whim of the public. So if there's more information that comes to light on this latest lawsuit that sheds an even darker picture on Deshaun Watson and his entire situation, then it wouldn't be too surprising to see the NFL decide to go back and adjust that suspension. Roger Goodell has the ultimate power and he can wield it however he wants. So he could easily put Deshaun back on his commissioner's list, for the remainder of the season. And that's just the end of the story there with Deshaun. So as of right now, though, Deshaun looks like he's on track to be cleared for suspension, be able to get back and play. He's done what he can, I guess, what is legal in his suspension in terms of being able to be around teammates in the facility and practices and stuff like that. So he's doing everything that he can. At least that's what his head coach is telling everybody. And it will just be a matter of Deshaun getting up to game speed once he's able to get back on the field and play.
Is there any reason to think that Cleveland wouldn't be excited about the prospect of getting this quarterback back on the field, a guy that they paid so much for, a guy that they apologized for when upwards of 30 women, brought lawsuits against him? I mean, barring something really, truly disturbing, or maybe even more disturbing than the allegations that we've seen already, do you get the sense that Cleveland has any hesitation about using him moving forward?
I don't think so. I think if they had any hesitation, they would not have made the trade to get him and would not have signed him to the deal that they did. I think Cleveland is all in. I think Cleveland wants to be finally done with not having a franchise quarterback, and they believe that that guy is Deshaun Watson, and they're going to play him, and they're going to have him be the face of the organization from now until he retires or decides to leave Cleveland, whichever happens first. I don't think Cleveland has any concerns about what the public feels towards them. As long as their franchise is winning football games and their stadium is filled and season tickets are sold and there's a chance for the playoffs or multiple appearances in the playoffs, Cleveland will be just fine having Deshaun Watson be their quarterback.
Yeah, it's tough when you have a game come down to a bounce or a play in Jacoby Brissett's case, because unfortunately the difference between being undefeated, however many is so stark in the NFL. You don't really get points, I guess, for coming super close. At least it doesn't feel that way. But do you think Jacoby Brissett will be the starter against Houston, or will this narrative play out of Deshaun Watson coming back to Houston, and will everyone get to kind of embrace the drama of it all?
I think the way Jacoby could end that sort of NFL narrative that they want, that they like to have in terms of that big storyline and being able to have a story built up for an upcoming game, which would be Deshaun Watson facing off against his former team. I think the only way Jacoby could potentially not allow that to happen is if he wins the rest of the games he has until Watson's suspension is over. And he has to win them pretty convincingly. I mean, I would say think back to college football days where it was, imperative for teams to run up the score because that showed how good they were. I think that's the mindset that Jacoby has to have with his team, is that we have to win, but we have to win big to show everybody that, listen, we don't need Deshaun Watson here to be the quarterback, that I can do this. I can win games with you guys. I'm the franchise quarterback that you didn't think you needed, but it turns out you actually do, because I'm that blue collar type of player that I'm going to go out here. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win a football game. If that means I need to throw a block, I will. If that means I need to run the ball, I will. I will throw it, whatever it takes to get a victory. I think that's what Jacoby needs to do, and I think he needs to win big. I don't know if that will necessarily happen. We've seen enough NFL game tape on Jacoby Brissett to know that he's a good quarterback. He's a guy that can come in for a handful of games, probably win at least 50% of them, and not really negatively impact your team's statistical output at all, in terms of the turnover margin or anything like that. He's going to take care of the ball. He's not going to force anything too crazy, but he's also not going to throw the ball deep down the field, and he's not going to really push things. He's just going to play kind of a nice, safe, conservative game and allows teammates to do what they do best, and that should be enough to win the game. At least that's how Jacoby's kind of played to his NFL career to this point, and I don't see anything changing.
So all that being said, I mean, it doesn't really seem or feel, at least to me anyway, that we are heading for any kind of quarterback controversy in Cleveland. I mean, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, but I just kind of get the sense that as soon as Deshaun Watson's able to get the keys, he's going to get the keys. As good of a job as Jacoby Brissett has done, it hasn't been quite good enough to convince people, without any kind of doubt that he could be the guy moving forward. I mean, is that what it feels like to you?
I think so. Now, with that being said, there is a very small part of me that would love to have the sentence uttered, Cleveland has a quarterback controversy. I mean, that would just be crazy to hear because of just how bad they've been with quarterbacks in their history. I don't think that's going to happen. Like I said, if Jacoby can win these next few games and can win them big, maybe like 20% chance that ends up happening. But I think right now, I think Cleveland is dead set on having Deshaun be their starting quarterback. I wouldn't be so surprised if Cleveland had said, even if Jacoby went undefeated, they would still put Deshaun in because of everything that went into getting Deshaun on their team, the trade, the contract, all of that. I think they were dead set, regardless of what happened in the season. Deshaun Watson is going to be their starting quarterback as soon as he's first eligible to be in the lineup. So I don't think there's a controversy that will happen anytime soon. Again, part of me wants to see, some chaos in Cleveland. I'd love to see, the fan base kind of divided, saying that Jacoby's a better quarterback than Deshaun, or that the team can win, with Jacoby, but they can't do it with Deshaun, or something like that, just because I think that would be a very exciting story to see and just kind of cover that team. But I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, just what Cleveland wants, more chaos and controversy and disappointment. If Deshaun Watson does come back and gets the starting job back at some point, whenever he's eligible, what ultimately happens to Jacoby Brissett?
I think Jacoby will more than likely look to kind of, get out of town and probably go to another franchise where he has a shot to be a starter, or at least compete for a starting job. There is the possibility that Jacoby could say, listen, Deshaun's had all these legal issues already. What's to say there aren't more coming that nobody's just quite aware of, or at least that, he's not quite aware of. So I think I'll stick around a little bit longer because of that possibility, and that would give me another shot to be a starting quarterback again in the NFL. I think Jacoby is smart enough to know that he could probably get one last crack at being a starting quarterback and show somebody out there that believes that they can, quote unquote, fix him and make him a starting viable NFL quarterback. I think that's something that would be appealing to him. I just don't know what team that would be out there. There's a lot of teams out there that could use a quarterback, But I think a lot of teams are smart enough to realize that Jacoby's not that answer. So I think at the end of the year, I think Jacoby might look to leave Cleveland and hope to get a starting opportunity, or at least an opportunity to compete for a starting gig somewhere in the NFL. But I don't know if he'll stay in Cleveland after the season.